How the hell did you gobble up $500,000? That was the question my father asked me, his voice like shattering glass in a room full of our closest friends and family. I wasn't robbed by a stranger in a dark alley. I was robbed in broad daylight at my father's birthday party. The thief wasn't a masked man with a gun. It was my own sister wearing a beautiful dress and a perfect smile. And the getaway driver, our mother. My name is Ava Sterling, and I was the last person to find out my life was a lie. Before I show you how a lifetime of trust can be executed in a single moment, I need to feel like I'm not screaming into the void. If you're here and you're listening, just drop a listening in the comments or let me know what city you're in. It means more than you know. Be sure to follow my story to the end. It's a reminder that sometimes the only way out is through the fire. Thank you for being here. Now, let me show you how it all began. The firestorm that consumed my family didn't start with a roar. It started with a quiet tremor. Weeks earlier, in the one place on Earth I felt completely safe, my lab on 47th Street. In the heart of New York's Diamond District, my world was an orderly universe of controlled light and immense pressure not unlike the gems I studied. Under the focused beam of my microscope lamp, a 2-carat Asher-cut diamond floated in the tweezer's grip. To anyone else, it was a sparkler. To me, it was a story waiting to be read. I wasn't just looking at the stone. I was reading its history through the language of its flaws, the microscopic crystals, the faint feathers, the subtle whispers of its billion-year journey from the Earth's mantle to this velvet-lined tray. My job was to find the truth hidden within the brilliance, and I was good at it. My focus was absolute the city's chaos, muted beyond the reinforced walls. I gently rotated the stone. There, a pinpoint inclusion nestled deep within a facet so small the previous gemologist had graded it. BVS1 very, very slightly included. But my eye caught the way it diffracted the light, a tiny discordant note in an otherwise perfect symphony. It was a VVS2. A small difference. But in our world, small differences are measured in thousands of dollars. I logged the new grade and leaned back the leather of my chair, groaning in the silence. My boss, Mr. Abramoff, a man whose family had been cutting diamonds since the Tsars, reviewed my report later that day. He peered through his own loupe, then looked at me over the rims of his glasses, a rare smile touching his lips. The sterling eye strikes again, he said, his Russian accent thick as honey. You see what others miss, Ava. It is a gift. That gift was my ticket out. It was the foundation of my entire future. My phone buzzed, pulling me from the world of karats and clarity. The caller ID read, Dad. I smiled, the tension in my shoulders easing. How are my beautiful gems? His voice boomed, warm and full of life, a stark contrast to the clinical quiet of my lab. The inanimate ones are flawless as usual. I laughed. How's retired life in the desert? Too much sunshine, not enough of my daughters, he said. And I could picture him on the patio of their Scottsdale home golf shirt, on overlooking the pristine green of the 9th hole. We never talked much about money. Dad was a retired real estate developer who had built his fortune on seeing the solid foundations others missed. He appreciated my work not for its monetary value, but for its substance. Find any new worlds in those stones today. Just a few tiny ones. And I saved your future son-in-law, whoever he may be, a couple grand on an engagement ring. He chuckled. That's my girl. Speaking of which, the final papers from the bank came through. The trust will liquidate right on schedule the week of your 30th. Are you ready? My heart did a little flip. Ready as I'll ever be, Dad. $500,000. The number still felt unreal. It was the seed capital for my own brand. Sterling Gems, a bespoke jewelry studio built on ethically sourced stones and transparent craftsmanship. It was more than money. It was his belief in me made tangible. "This isn't a gift, Ava," he said, as if reading my mind. "It's my investment in your talent. You've earned it." We talked for a few more minutes, and just before we hung up, he sighed. "By the way, your sister has started some new lifestyle brand online. I don't quite get it, but it looks expensive." There it was, that familiar note of weariness in his voice, the slight dip that always appeared when he spoke of Chloe. After the call, a morbid curiosity got the better of me. I opened Instagram. Chloe's profile was an explosion of sun-drenched perfection. Her laughing on a yacht in Miami, a video of her unboxing a new designer handbag, the price of which could have covered my rent for 3 months. A caption under a photo of her at a 5-star resort read, "Stop dreaming, start doing." A memory sharp and unwelcome flashed in my mind. I was 10 on a beach in California, meticulously building a sandcastle with elaborate towers and a moat. Chloe, 2 years older, had watched from a distance. Just as I placed the final perfect seashell on the highest turret, she'd run over, stomped the entire thing into a flat, wet mess, and snatched the shell for her own collection. She hadn't done it out of malice. She'd done it simply because she wanted the shell, and destroying my creation was the quickest way to get it. I closed the app, a familiar hollow ache in my chest. It wasn't jealousy. It was the vast, unbridgeable distance between us. I was a builder. She was a taker. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, that I would use my $500,000 to build something real, something she could never ever touch. 2 weeks later, the first tremor hit. It arrived not as a dramatic phone call, but as a quiet, unassuming email from a fellow gemologist, a collector named Marcus, who specialized in rare colored stones. The subject line was simple: "Extraordinary Tanzanite, Scottsdale." My pulse quickened. I clicked it open. The email was brief, containing a high-resolution photo and a short description. A near-flawless violet-blue Tanzanite, over 20 carats cushion cut. It was being offered for sale by a private anonymous seller in Scottsdale, Arizona. A cold dread washed over me. It couldn't be. I pulled up a file on my computer, my hands trembling slightly. There it was, a photo of the same stone sent to me 6 months ago by the owner of a small independent mine in Tanzania. I had been cultivating a relationship with him for a year, drawn by his commitment to ethical mining practices. This specific stone, with its unique dichroism, flashing from sapphire blue to deep amethyst depending on the light, was to be the cornerstone of my inaugural collection for Sterling Gems. We had a verbal agreement. He was holding it for me until my funds were released. The stone in Marcus's email was not just similar, it was identical. The same slight inclusion near the girdle, the same perfect saturation. My cornerstone, my showpiece. And it was for sale in my family's hometown. I immediately called the mine owner in Tanzania. The line crackled, and when he finally answered, his voice was hesitant, evasive. "Ah, Miss Sterling, I was going to call you." "What happened, Joseph?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "The 20-carat violet blue. It's on the market in Arizona." He was silent for a long moment. An American investor. He finally stammered, She She made an offer a significant amount over your projected price. In cash. She wanted the deal closed immediately. I'm sorry, Ava. My family. The offer was too much to refuse. My mind raced trying to piece it together. An investor. How did she even know about the stone? The information was private. I don't know. She had a lawyer handle everything. Very discreet. A lawyer in Scottsdale. An anonymous seller. A private deal for a stone that almost no one knew existed. The coincidence was too great, too pointed. This didn't feel like a business deal gone wrong. It felt personal. It felt like targeted sabotage. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I called the Scottsdale law firm Marcus had mentioned in his email. I posed as a potential buyer interested in the tanzanite. The paralegal who answered was polite but firm. I'm sorry, ma'am, but that piece is part of a private estate sale. We are not at liberty to disclose any information about the seller or the terms of the acquisition. It is not open to public inquiry. A dead end. I hung up the phone, the silence of my lab suddenly suffocating. My dream, which had felt so solid and close, had just had its heart ripped out. I stared at the intricate design I had sketched for the stone, a platinum pendant meant to showcase its otherworldly color. Now, it was just a drawing of something I'd lost a ghost on a piece of paper. And I had no idea who had stolen it from me. The next tremor came 4 days later. My phone rang and Chloe's name flashed on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct made me answer. Her voice was different from the cheerful, vacuous tone of her Instagram videos. It was tight, laced with a convincing theatrical worry. Ava, thank God you answered. Chloe, what's wrong? She started with small talk, asking about work, but quickly cut to the chase. Listen, Ava, I'm calling because, well, I don't want you to worry when you see Dad at his party next week. A knot formed in my stomach. Worry about what I just spoke to him. He seemed fine. That's the thing, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He's putting on a brave face, a really brave face. She proceeded to weave an elaborate, horrifying story. Dad, she claimed, had been caught on the wrong side of a massive commercial real estate deal that had gone south. He was facing a catastrophic loss, something so significant it could jeopardize their parents' financial security. He was, she said, deeply ashamed, and didn't want anyone to know, especially me. He didn't want to burden me or derail my plans. His 65th birthday party is incredibly important for him. Chloe emphasized, her voice cracking with fake emotion. It's about keeping up appearances for his business partners, showing everyone that everything is fine. So when you come home, please, please do not mention anything about business or money, especially not your trust fund. He's feeling so much pressure, so guilty, that he can't give you more right now. The story was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. It took my love for my father and weaponized it. It explained away his cheerful demeanor as a brave performance. It recast my silence not as ignorance, but as an act of sensitivity and grace. And most insidiously, it created a protective bubble around the one topic, my $500 and $1,000 that she needed to keep hidden. A part of me wanted to believe her. It would explain the vague sense of stress I'd sometimes picked up from my parents. But my gemologist's brain, the part of me trained to spot flaws, was screaming that something was wrong. My father was the most transparent man I knew. He had never hidden anything from me. And then the two tremors connected. The phantom investor in Scottsdale, the stolen tanzanite, the sudden desperate need to keep me from talking about money. Were they related? Was I paranoid? Ava, are you there? Chloe's voice pulled me back. Yes, I said, my own voice flat. I understand. I'll be discreet. Thank you? She breathed a wave of relief in her tone. You have no idea what this means to him. As soon as I hung up, I knew I couldn't let it go. I was a professional seeker of truth, and my own life had just become a puzzle box of lies. I didn't hesitate. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my determined face. I wasn't just booking a flight to Phoenix for a party anymore. I was flying home for a forensic investigation. I stood at my apartment window looking out at the glittering, indifferent skyline of New York City. But my mind was already 1,000 miles away in the sun-bleached perfection of Scottsdale. I felt like I was walking into a fog one carefully crafted by my own family. And I knew with a certainty that made my blood run cold that something ugly was waiting for me inside it. Flying into Phoenix Sky Harbor is like descending into a different world. The hazy vertical canyons of Manhattan gave way to a vast open expanse under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. As I drove the rented convertible toward Scottsdale, giant saguaro cacti stood like silent sentinels guarding the manicured lawns of multi-million-dollar villas. It was a landscape of curated perfection, a beautiful sun-drenched facade that did little to calm the chaos churning in my gut. The family home was a sprawling adobe-style mansion that backed onto a championship golf course. It was a beautiful cage. My mother, Catherine, met me at the door, her smile a little too bright, her hug a little too tight. Ava, darling, you're here. Was the flight dreadful? You look tired. Are you eating enough in that city? She fired off questions like a machine gun, a verbal smokescreen designed to avoid any real conversation. She talked about the weather, the party preparations, the caterer, anything and everything, except the one thing that mattered. Then Dad appeared, and the first crack in Chloe's story showed. He wasn't pale or strained. He was tan, relaxed, and brimming with a genuine, uncomplicated happiness. He wrapped me in a bear hug that smelled of sunshine and expensive cologne. There's my girl, he beamed, holding me at arm's length. Just in time. I need your opinion on the seating chart. I'm trying to keep Bob and his ex-wife at opposite ends of the ballroom. He was excited, energetic, and completely devoid of the crushing financial anxiety Chloe had described. This wasn't a man performing bravery. This was a man thriving. Before I could even process the disconnect, Chloe swept in, linking her arm through mine and steering me toward the patio. Her performance was flawless. See, she whispered, her voice full of feigned sympathy. He's putting on a brave face for us. For everyone. Don't let it fool you, Ava. He's breaking inside. She squeezed my arm, her eyes wide with a manufactured sincerity. He even told me not to tell you he was struggling, because he was afraid you'd cancel your plans to help him. His pride is all he has left right now. Her words were a masterclass in psychological warfare. She took the truth I was seeing with my own eyes, Dad's happiness, and twisted it into a piece of evidence for her lie. I was trapped. To challenge her would be to challenge my father's supposed pride. She had made me a co-conspirator in a cover-up that I was beginning to suspect was entirely fake. The moment I could get away, I told them I needed to bring my bags to my room. I needed a space to think. On my way, I passed Chloe's open bedroom door and stopped intending to ask where the spare phone charger was. But I never asked the question. Her room looked like the inside of a Neiman Marcus catalog. Shopping bags from Chanel and Dior were piled in a corner, but it was the item on her polished white vanity that made the air leave my lungs. A sleek silver Maserati key fob. Next to it, a leather-bound folder. I stepped inside, my heart pounding. The folder contained the insurance and registration documents for a brand new Maserati Ghibli. Owner, Chloe Sterling. Purchase date, 8 days ago. A six-figure car. Bought just over a week ago in the middle of our father's supposed financial collapse. It wasn't just reckless, it was a declaration. My vague, formless suspicion now had a shape, and it was the gleaming, impossible silhouette of a luxury sports car. I couldn't wait. The questions were burning a hole in my mind. I found Chloe by the pool, lounging on a chaise and scrolling through her phone as if she didn't have a care in the world. The turquoise water glittered. The sun was warm, but all I felt was ice. I walked straight up to her, holding the Maserati keys between my thumb and forefinger. They felt unnaturally heavy. This car. Explain it, I said, my voice low and tight. I don't understand how you could do this when Dad is about to lose everything. Chloe didn't even flinch. She slowly lowered her phone, took off her designer sunglasses, and sighed. It was the long-suffering sigh of a genius trying to explain a complex theorem to a child. I was hoping I wouldn't have to tell you this way, she said, her voice dripping with disappointment. I wanted it to be a surprise once the results were in. She sat up, her expression shifting into one of intense seriousness. The story about Dad being in trouble, it was a cover. A white lie to protect a much bigger secret. My mind braced for another lie, but I wasn't prepared for the sheer audacity of this one. I've discovered the investment opportunity of a lifetime, she said, her eyes gleaming. A friend of mine from Stanford founded a biotech startup. They're on the verge of a patent that will revolutionize regenerative medicine. The initial investor round was closing, and it was a now or never situation. It required a significant buy-in, and it had to happen fast. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. I knew you'd hesitate, Ava. You analyze everything to death. So Mom and I made an executive decision. We acted. I borrowed the $500,000 from your trust. Mom co-signed the authorization. This isn't spending, Ava. This is building you an empire. This is making your money work for you in a way you couldn't even imagine. As if on cue, my mother walked out onto the patio. She saw us, her face tensing for a moment, before settling into a look of weary resolve. Chloe opened her tablet and showed me a screen filled with what looked like a professional prospectus, charts, projections, scientific jargon. And the Maserati, Chloe said, with a triumphant flick of her wrist. It's a company car, part of the package for seed investors, to project an image of success. I didn't buy it. My mother stepped forward, placing a hand on Chloe's shoulder. I was so nervous. Ava, she said, her voice trembling slightly. But Chloe's friend is brilliant. He showed me the patents. I just wanted what was best for both of you. The air rushed out of me. The story was insane, reckless, but plausible. In a world of overnight tech billionaires, it wasn't impossible. For a dizzying moment, my anger dissolved into a confusing cocktail of doubt, hope, and a pang of guilt for thinking the worst. They hadn't betrayed me. They had taken a wild gamble on my behalf. The tension was almost gone, the mystery almost solved. Maybe Chloe wasn't a villain, just a reckless visionary. But my professional skepticism, the part of me that looks for the flaw in the facet, kicked in. Can I see the official wire transfer confirmation? I asked, my voice even. And the signed investment contract. For the first time, Chloe hesitated. A flicker of something panic crossed her eyes before she masked it. Of course, she said a little too quickly. It's all with the attorneys. They're finalizing the paperwork. We'll have everything by next week. It was a tiny hesitation, a minuscule flaw. But in a diamond that was supposed to be perfect, it was the only thing I could see. The morning of the party, I felt like I was living in a fog. Chloe's story was a constant loop in my head, a perfectly constructed narrative that felt both completely insane and strangely believable. That tiny hesitation was the only thing I could cling to. I couldn't face them. I made an excuse and drove to have lunch with the one person in my family whose judgment was as sharp and unclouded as a flawless diamond, my Aunt Isabel. We met at a quiet bistro in Old Town Scottsdale. Isabel, the director of jewelry for a prestigious auction house, was the epitome of elegance and intellect. She listened intently as I laid out the entire sordid story, the stolen tanzanite, the lie about Dad's finances, and finally, Chloe's grand tale of a biotech startup. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a long time. She simply took a slow sip of her iced tea, her eyes thoughtful. Then, with the calm, precise air of a surgeon, she dissected every one of Chloe's lies. First, she began setting her glass down gently. Your father, Richard, just closed one of the biggest deals of his career 2 weeks ago. His finances aren't just fine, they're spectacular. My heart sank. Second, Chloe's brilliant biotech friend. I know his family. The boy was just cut off by his father for gambling away his trust fund. He doesn't have a startup. He has a serious problem. I felt sick. And third, she said, her eyes meeting mine with a look of profound sympathy. The Maserati. She paused. I was at the dealership last week getting my own car serviced. I saw Chloe there. She wasn't signing a company lease Ava. She was paying for it. In full. With a cashier's check. I saw it with my own eyes. Isabel then delivered the final devastating blow. And to top it off, I saw her at an auction last week. She won the bid on a vintage Patek Philippe watch. The final price was $80,000. The fog vanished, replaced by a horrible, searing clarity. It wasn't a gamble. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated, cold-blooded theft, a conspiracy between my sister and my mother to liquidate my future and turn it into a collection of flashy, meaningless things. The betrayal was so immense, so complete, that I couldn't even cry. I just felt cold. You have to tell your father, Isabel said gently. Right now. I looked out the window at the bright Arizona sun. Everyone was preparing for a party, a celebration of the man whose trust had just been so thoroughly violated. And an idea began to form in my mind, an idea born of ice and fire. No, I said, my voice steady and clear. Chloe has spent her entire life building a stage and performing on it. She loves an audience. I met my aunt's gaze. Tonight, I'm going to give her one. When I returned home, I went to my closet and chose my dress. A floor-length gown in deep blood-red silk. It was a dress that didn't ask for attention but commanded it. I did my makeup with meticulous care, creating a mask of perfect composure. When I was ready, I looked in the mirror. I didn't see a victim. I saw the calm in the eye of a hurricane. The drive to the country club was suffocatingly silent. My parents, oblivious, chatted about the guests. But in the rearview mirror, I saw Chloe watching me, a flicker of fear in her eyes, as she took in my crimson dress and my empty, placid expression. She knew something had shifted. The stage was set. The storm was about to break. The country club in Scottsdale shimmered beneath the chandeliers like a cathedral of wealth. Polished silver trays floated between conversations carrying champagne flutes and sea salt canapes. A jazz quartet filled the marble space with something rich and nonchalant. Chloe, in a satin emerald gown, worked the crowd like a seasoned diplomat, all practiced charm and champagne laughter. Catherine Ever, the dutiful matriarch, was close behind her collecting compliments, like a curator cataloging praise. And me? I hovered near the periphery, a red silhouette in a sea of cream and navy, letting the spectacle play out. Richard rose to speak just before the cake was brought out. He tapped his glass, and the room fell into silence. All heads turned to the man of the hour. He smiled, full of polished warmth, and began recounting 65 years of life lessons and leadership. He spoke of business of building something that lasted. But then he paused and looked directly at Chloe and me. My greatest legacy, he said, is not the company. It's family. He turned to Chloe. To my eldest, so bold, so relentless. You've always had a fire, and I've admired that courage. He then glanced at me. And Ava, whose quiet excellence will one day build a legacy even stronger. I am so proud of you. The words hit like a match dropped into dry grass. Chloe stiffened her smile, faltering just for a second. Catherine blinked, stone-faced. I didn't move, but inside I braced myself. This was it, the final breath before collapse. Moments later, a portly man with a suntan and too many rings approached Richard with a boisterous laugh and a pat on the back. Fantastic party, Rich. And your daughters wow Chloe, especially. I ran into her at the Maserati dealership last week. That ride she picked out? Gorgeous. Must be nice to see those investments bearing fruit. Huh. Time stopped. Richard's face paled beneath the room's golden light. Chloe's new car hadn't come from a windfall. He knew that. And that morning, he'd seen the trust account statement, the full $500,000 gone. All of it. The conclusion he reached, though wrong, felt inevitable. He turned slowly, eyes locking on me, and started towards the dessert table where I stood with Chloe and Catherine. Ava, he said, voice low and burning. I saw the account this morning. Tell me, how the hell did you gobble up $500,000? The words slammed into me with surgical precision. Even though I had rehearsed this scene in my head, the accusation still stunned. What was all I could manage? I didn't need to look at Chloe to feel her panic, but I did. And there it was. Her face had gone waxy white, her eyes wide with dread. For the first time, the lie she'd stitched together unraveled with a single thread. I straightened, my voice clear. You're asking the wrong daughter. Then I turned to Chloe. She's the one you should be questioning. The room buzzed with curiosity as guests tilted toward the unfolding storm. I didn't hesitate. Ask her about the Maserati, about the Patek Philippe watch, about the non-existent startup. Ask her about the Tanzanite she stole from my desk drawer. Chloe's mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. That's not true, she croaked, but her voice was brittle. Isabel, standing a few steps away, nodded slowly. The weight of her confirmation broke the last thread of Chloe's denial. Catherine rushed forward, trying to place herself between us, but it was no use. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The silence around us was louder than anything I could have said. Finally, Chloe crumpled under the weight of it all. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears. streaking the carefully applied makeup. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but the apology wasn't for me. It was for the illusion she had destroyed. The party disbanded in awkward silence, guests retreating from the wreckage as though from a crime scene. No more jazz, no more champagne, just broken glass and whispered goodbyes. The house was quiet the next morning, too quiet. The unopened birthday gifts sat like relics on the dining room table, untouched and irrelevant. Chloe and Catherine remained behind closed doors. I sat alone in the living room, the sunlight unforgiving through the tall windows. I didn't feel triumphant, only tired. Eventually, Richard summoned me. His study smelled of oak and old ambition. He looked older, noticeably so, and though his posture remained straight, something inside him had bent. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk and sat without preamble. "I've made my decision," he said. His voice was flat, firm, and emotionless. "Chloe will leave the house today. I won't press charges on the condition that she signs a legal agreement. She'll liquidate her assets and repay every cent to your account. From this moment on, she is no longer my daughter." I didn't flinch, though I felt something fracture deeper inside. "As for your mother," he continued, "we'll separate. I'll ensure she has what she needs to live comfortably, but she will no longer have a place in this family or my estate." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but words felt meaningless. I had gotten justice, yes, but there was no joy in it, only an empty victory. Richard looked away, his hand steepled tightly. I left the study and found Chloe in the front hall, suitcase in hand, sunglasses hiding whatever bruises she didn't want me to see. I stepped in front of the door. Why, I asked. She didn't answer immediately. For once, there were no dramatic exits, no performative tears. When she finally spoke, it was quiet. "Because I could never be you. You make things look easy. I had to build my life on borrowed glitter and borrowed lies. There was no plea for forgiveness, just a truth, raw and ugly." She walked out into the Arizona sun and didn't look back. A year slipped by quietly, like the tide receding beneath the moonlight. The day I hung the brass plaque outside my studio, "Sterling Gems," etched in serif capitals, I felt a sense of ownership, not just over a business, but over my life. The studio sat nestled on a quiet stretch of Old Town Scottsdale, its large windows catching the Arizona sun, its minimalist interiors awash in soft whites and pale ash wood. Inside, the air smelled faintly of citrus and metal polish. There were no echoes of the past here, just light warmth and the steady pulse of something I'd built with my own hands. I was helping a young couple that morning, showing them a custom engagement ring, rose gold with a responsibly sourced ruby, set in a design inspired by desert wildflowers. The bride-to-be gasped softly when she saw it. That sound alone, unguarded and genuine, reminded me why I had fought so hard to get here. Each piece I made wasn't just jewelry. It was a declaration that beauty could have integrity, that craftsmanship mattered more than legacy, and that some names, like Sterling, could mean more in action than inheritance. Business was better than I had dared to hope. Word had spread about my ethical sourcing, about the designs that blended modern lines with old-world detailing, and maybe whispered somewhere in the undercurrent about the family scandal no one quite dared to bring up. Still, clients kept coming, drawn not by gossip but by trust. On the anniversary of the store's opening, Richard and Aunt Isabel came by just before closing. My father looked different now, more weathered around the eyes, a little slower in his stride, but there was lightness in his presence that hadn't been there in years. He admired a sapphire cufflink design I had framed on the wall, and we talked about gemstones and nonsense and everything in between. When we laughed, it wasn't awkward or forced, it was real. Isabel sipped tea behind the counter, pretending not to eavesdrop, though I knew she caught every word. She had been my anchor during the storm, and still was in the calm. The three of us sat together in the back room for nearly an hour, a quiet rhythm between us, not quite a full family, but whole enough. At one point, Richard asked if I wanted to hear about Chloe or Catherine. I told him only if he felt like sharing. He nodded. Chloe was renting a 2-bedroom walk-up on the edge of Phoenix. She was working double shifts, daytime assistant at a consignment boutique, nights managing inventory at a warehouse. Slowly, she was repaying the balance of what she owed, down to the last dollar. Catherine had moved to Santa Fe. She kept to herself, painting landscapes and emailing me short notes every few months. I hadn't replied to any of them. Before he left, my father handed me a small navy velvet box. The lawyer tracked it down, he said. I opened it. Inside was the tanzanite stone, violet blue, luminous, intact. I held it between my fingers, the weight of it warm against my skin. Once it had symbolized everything I lost. Now it was something else entirely. I didn't put it in a vault or on display. I brought it into the workshop and placed it gently onto the velvet lining of my jeweler's table. I knew exactly what I would make from it. Not a pendant, not something extravagant. A ring. Simple, bold, and unmistakably mine. I switched on the task light, picked up my loupe, then my file, then my torch. The flame flared to life with a quiet hiss. Outside, the desert sun dipped low, casting gold across the floorboards. I took one long breath and began. From the ashes, I had built something, enduring, not a monument to what had been stolen, but a legacy forged in truth, a new kind of sterling standard, one that finally truly belonged to me. Sometimes, what breaks us also shapes us. And from what was shattered, we get to choose what we rebuild. If this story touched something in you, maybe a wound, maybe a hope, just comment yes below. Whether you've lived through it or simply understood it, your story matters too. This space is for us, for the ones who've been quiet too long, for the ones still healing. So, stay, listen, share, or simply hit follow. If you want more stories like this, honest, raw, and human, you're not alone. Not anymore.